biết là ngày làm việc buổi sáng ngày hôm nay của quý vị như thế nào ạ? Hà Nội có thời tiết trời thu khá đẹp phải không ạ? Còn tôi thì đang có mặt ở trường đại học và để đặc biệt sự kiện là đón ngày phụ nữ Việt Nam 20 tháng 10 và được tổ chức tại trường Lao động và Xã hội. Có thể nói là sự kiện này thì đã thu hút khá là đông các bạn sinh viên đến tham dự trực tiếp và thậm chí dõi online qua fanpage của Cà phê sáng với VTV3 nữa. Như chúng ta đã biết rằng là bình đẳng giới ở Việt Nam thì có lẽ là được cải thiện trong những thập kỷ qua. Tuy nhiên thì bạo lực trên cơ sở giới và đặc biệt là bạo lực gia đình cũng như là những cái hành vi có hại và bao gồm cả việc lựa chọn giới tính trên cơ sở định kiến giới đối với phụ nữ và trẻ em thì vẫn còn tồn tại. Ngày hôm nay thì đã một cái chủ đề tôi nghĩ là khá hay, đó chính là làm con cái để tỏa sáng. Và tọa đàm thì do Bộ Lao động Thương binh và Xã hội phối hợp với Quỹ Dân số Liên Hợp Quốc và Trường Đại học Lao động Xã hội đồng tổ chức do chương trình hợp tác và phát triển Na Uy tài trợ. Quý vị biết đấy, theo điều tra của Tổng dân số và nhà ở vào năm 2019 thì tỷ lệ giới tính khi mà sinh của Việt Nam hiện ước tính là 111,5 trẻ em trai trên 100 trẻ em gái. Với một cái sự chênh lệch như thế này thì không biết là quý vị có cảm nhận gì không ạ? Có suy nghĩ gì không về những cái con số hết sức là có thể nói là khá là ấn tượng này? 111,5 trẻ em trai trên 100 trẻ em gái. Điều này chúng ta cũng đã thấy được rằng là cái sự phân biệt và sự lựa chọn giới tính khi sinh có lẽ là vẫn còn đang tồn tại phải không ạ? Vâng, và chính bởi vì vậy cho nên là cái sự kiện ngày hôm nay thì chúng ta không những là được gặp gỡ những người phụ nữ có thể nói rằng là họ đã vượt qua những khó khăn của bản thân, vượt lên chính mình, có được sự thành công nhất định trong cuộc sống nữa, mà lắng nghe những cái câu chuyện, những chia sẻ hết sức có thể nói là chân thực của họ về công việc mà họ đang thực hiện. Có thể nhiều người nghĩ rằng đó là công việc dành cho nam giới, thế nhưng mà không, họ cũng thực hiện rất tốt. Vâng, thưa quý vị, ngay bên cạnh tôi đây lúc này xin được trân trọng giới thiệu là Thượng tá Tiến sĩ Phan Thị Mỹ Hạnh, Phó trưởng phòng Văn phòng Cơ quan Cảnh sát điều tra Bộ Công an. Vâng, có lẽ là xin được chào chị và chị Trang có thể gửi lời chào đến quý vị đang theo dõi Cà phê sáng được không ạ? Chị Hạnh ạ. Vâng, rất xin lỗi ạ. Chị Hạnh có thể gửi lời chào đến cho quý vị khán giả đang theo dõi livestream Cà phê sáng với VTV3.
Xin kính chào quý vị khán giả đang theo dõi chương trình Cà phê sáng với VTV3. Vâng, xin chào chị.
Vâng, không biết được rằng là chị chút việc hiện nay mà chị đang đảm nhận ạ?
Vâng, tôi hiện nay đang công tác tại Văn phòng Cơ quan Cảnh sát điều tra Bộ Công an và tính đến bây giờ là 26 năm và đã kinh qua rất là nhiều đơn vị công tác, và đến bây giờ là hiện nay công tác đang làm phòng Cảnh sát điều tra Bộ Công an thì với nhiệm vụ là tham gia xây dựng và hướng dẫn pháp luật và cũng tham gia giảng dạy tại học viện Cảnh sát nhân dân và một số trường đại học, và ngoài ra thì có thể tham gia viết sách cũng như là ngồi thường xuyên để hướng dẫn các sinh viên về một số lĩnh vực công tác phòng chống tội phạm.
Hướng dẫn sinh viên nhưng mà lại liên quan đến công tác điều tra phòng chống tội phạm phải không ạ? Nghe công việc có vẻ khá là khô khan đúng không chị? Vậy thì không biết được rằng là điều gì thôi thúc chị để thực hiện và hoàn thành tốt những cái công việc và cũng như là cái theo đuổi trở thành ước mơ trở thành một nữ cảnh sát ạ?
Thực ra ai cũng nghĩ là làm nhiệm vụ của công an, đặc biệt cơ quan cảnh sát điều tra thì đối với phụ nữ rất là khô khan. Tuy nhiên thì như quý vị đã thấy đấy, với phụ nữ thì ở lĩnh vực nào đàm hôm nay chúng ta sẽ gặp bạn Nguyễn Thị Thu Trang, một nhà bảo tồn động vật hoang dã, nhà hoạt động môi trường ở vùng bạn
cho Trang theo đuổi ước mơ của mình?
Có lẽ một phần đấy là vì đối với Trang thì đây không phải là công việc mà nó là một niềm đam mê, là những cái việc mà Trang đã muốn làm từ khi còn nhỏ. Từ lúc mà mới có 8 tuổi thì chẳng may nhìn thấy một chú gấu đã bị người ta lấy mật, và chính như cái hình ảnh và cái âm thanh lúc đấy khi mà nghe được thì khiến mình cảm thấy là đây là cái việc mà mình rất muốn làm để cho gấu cũng như là các loài động vật hoang dã khác không bị khai thác quá mức như thế nữa.
Chúc Trang thời gian tới sẽ thực hiện được những ước mơ của mình hơn nữa. Và bây giờ với buổi tọa đàm, xin mời quý vị cùng theo dõi livestream. Trong quá trình livestream mà quý vị có câu hỏi gì với những khách mời thì xin mời gửi các câu hỏi lên livestream của chúng tôi. Chúng tôi sẽ chuyển các câu hỏi. Thì chúng ta sẽ cùng xem một số video để hình dung ra hành trình con gái để tỏa sáng.
Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng. It is how you raise a kid regardless of the gender. Girls deserve to shine.
tiến bộ của phụ nữ Việt Nam. Xin được trân trọng giới thiệu bà Hai Sobekan, Đại sứ Na Uy tại Việt Nam. Please welcome Her Excellency Sobekan, Norwegian Ambassador.
Madam Naomi Kitahara, UNFPA representative to Vietnam. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Doãn Thị Mai Hương, Vice Rector of ULISA. We also welcome lecturers and more than 300 students from ULISA, young people, NGOs, and many other following us on Facebook or other fan page, as well as reporters from press agencies. To open the dialogue, we wish to invite Madam Nguyễn Thị Hà, Vice Minister of Molisa, to deliver the opening speech, please. Dear Her Excellency Hans Sobekan, Norwegian Ambassador to Vietnam, Madam Naomi Kitahara, UNFPA representative to Vietnam, dear distinguished guests, professors, and students. First, on behalf of leaders of Molisa, I wish to convey our warm greetings to Madam Ambassador and Madam Representative, all professors and students from ULISA, and to all participants in today's event. Girls deserve to shine on the occasion of the establishment of Vietnam Women's Union, October the 20th. Ladies and gentlemen, and my dear student, in Vietnam, gender equality has been a cross-cutting policy of the party and the state, and also a strategic mission of the country, as we seek to develop a country that is harmonious and capable of achieving sustainable development. Vietnamese women today are demonstrating their strong roles and contribution in different aspects of the social life. In politics, you see many progresses have been made. The ratio of female congresswomen is 30%, ranked 62 out of 190 countries. We have the first chairwoman of the National Assembly. And before that, we have many celebrated women, Madam Nguyễn Thị Bình or Madam Định, former Vice President of Socialist Republic of Vietnam. We also have 3 women scientists honored by UNESCO as talented scientists of the world. And in recent years, we see a rise in the number of female business leaders, and they really contribute substantially to national growth. Women also feature prominently in culture and sports, which are often assumed to be fields dedicated solely to men. The first time in history, the Vietnamese women's football team won a place to the 2023 World Cup. And our female athletes also contributed substantially to our achievements at SEA Games. The women contributed more than 50% of the total medals that we have won. You also see other images of women participating in the PKO peacekeeping operations, as well as other UN missions. Both personally or indirectly, some serve in field hospital in Africa. There are also other notable achievements that have been contributed by Vietnamese women, and they really show their important roles to our society. It is evident that Vietnamese women today really inherit the spirit of the Chung sister and Lady Triệu, the heroine in the past. And in addition to their various efforts that I just mentioned, Vietnamese women also performing very well their position in the family as mother, grandmother, as wives and daughter. They raise their children, they take care of husband, and they also become role models for other family members and their descendants. So to sum up, Vietnamese women not only fulfill their feminine role, but they also perform extremely well in other aspects. In recent years, the party and the state pay special attention to improving the policy and legal frameworks to promote gender equality. Policies such as training for female women, healthcare, supporting women in startup. Last Saturday, the PM spent an entire morning from 8 to 12:30 to have a dialogue with Vietnamese women of different backgrounds, and the event also have the presence of leaders of ministries, and the PM tasked many ministries, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Science and Technology, etc., that they must issue new policies in order to further empower women, to ensure women can participate more effectively in social activities. You may also been told that in 2019 we revised the labor code, and by so doing we transformed the approach from simply protecting female workers to a new approach, which is to ensure equality for all workers and laborers, particularly to make sure that women receive the same treatment as men. In terms of prevention and response to GBV, the government issues the first time ever communication strategy for gender equality, which is the evidence of the special attention paid to gender equality by our government. There are also, though as efforts have been recognized by international organizations, at the moment, Vietnam ranking in the global gender equality index, Vietnam ranks is moved up 4 positions, thanks to our improvement in terms of education and healthcare for women. Vietnam also performed well in 2021, which is also an improvement. That being said, we still see gender gap both in Vietnam and in the world. under the impact of COVID-19, we see even more serious impact. And we also have to consider the impact of Industrial Revolution 4.0, which may add to gender equality in the labor force. The 2021 report on gender gap show that it will require 136 years to alleviate the gender gap, and COVID-19 added 36 years to the original prediction of 100 years period. And in Vietnam, we still see the existence of harmful practices, the son's preference, and discrimination against women in the labor force. And this is quite visible in Asian countries as well. And for that reason, women still face challenges in order to really shine, to demonstrate their roles and to fulfill their potential. So we need to do more to narrow down the gender gap, and this requires the joint efforts from the government, from Vietnamese agencies and international partners to make sure that we really empower women. And I know that you, the young girl here, you will be the vanguards. You will be our future in 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Mrs. Doãn Mai Hương, Vice Rector of ULISA. I hope that through this dialogue, we will be able to communicate our messages and images that we have from the dialogue today as broadly as possible. We need to convey the messages to our mother, grandmother, to the women, and also to men, that girls deserve to shine. A couple of days ago, the rector of ULISA told me that ULISA has one of the highest rates of students being admitted to the Communist Party, which really shows the great efforts of your student. I used to be a student at ULISA, but I didn't manage to get admitted during my undergraduate time. So I really appreciate your efforts and also the achievements that you have made. And I hope that through this program, you will contribute your efforts to share the messages and to share the viewpoints contributed by our speakers today, so that the entire society become more informed of the importance of women. On behalf of leaders of MOLISA, we welcome this initiative organized by MOLISA and UNFPA within the framework of the International Week of the Girls. We wish to thank the Norwegian Embassy for supporting this dialogue, as well as other activities under the project to address GBSS and other harmful practices. I also hope that the speakers today will really ignite a new spirit and determination amongst our women, our girls, and among all of us, so that we can join hands to create a happy future. With that in mind, I declare the opening of the dialogue on this occasion. I wish all of you, and I wish in particular Madam Ambassador and Madam Representative in Vietnam, and all ladies and girls in Vietnam, I wish you success, happiness, and full of further achievements. My thanks to Vice Minister Nguyễn Thị Hà. Now may I invite Madam Heide Søbækken, Norwegian Ambassador to Vietnam, to deliver the opening speech.
I'm going to move away the little pedestal. Dear Madam Nguyen Thi Ha, Deputy Minister of Labour, War, Invalids and Social Affairs, Ms. Naomi Kitahara, Country Representative of UNFPA, professors and students, dear friends. It is fantastic to be here today and to be part of this dialogue about girls deserve to shine. Gender equality is a core priority in Norwegian foreign and development policy because all evidence shows that women's economic and political participation is fundamental to economic growth and peaceful societies. If we neglect that, we pay by weakening our country's performance. That should be a pretty convincing argument for those in power. Basically, gender equality for the good of society as a whole. But if I can be a bit personal for a moment, I must admit that my passion for gender equality comes from the individual perspective. It makes me furious that so many girls are prevented from using their talents and making their own choices, or even being born, simply because of their gender. So gender equality is about both of these perspectives. The society's good and the individual's good, reinforcing each other. Gender-biased sex selection, or son preference, is ultimately a symptom of girls and women being valued less than boys and men. It is evident in traditions and laws that, for example, prevent daughters from inheriting and see sons as economic security for aging parents, while investing in daughters seem like a waste. Vietnam has already taken important measures to end son preference and has managed to halt the gap between the number of girls and boys at birth. I really hope that this collaboration between Molisa, UNFPA and funded by NORAD can help turn this trend around. The project has indeed achieved some very impressive results. There's a national dialogue that has been established, and a gender-biased sex selection coordination mechanism will be piloted in Bắc Giang and Vung Tau provinces. And all of this is underpinned by solid data. A baseline survey on son preference and review of all the interventions over the last 10 years. There are also fact sheets on the trends of sex ratios at birth and policy recommendations. I especially like the very creative communications campaign to change the norms and attitudes to son preference. There have been TikTok contests, symphony concerts, and virtual arts exhibitions, and dialogues forums online, offline, on TV and radio, And here we are. I'm thrilled to be part of the dialogue here today. And really, my main message is that gender equality, broadly speaking, is also the answer to eliminating son preference. Of course, every country's road to development and gender equality will be different. But I think there is still a lot that we can learn from each other. I learned a lot about what has worked in Norway from Jens Stoltenberg. Maybe you recognize his name. He is now the Secretary General of NATO and works every day to try to resolve and find a solution in Ukraine. But by training, he is an economist. And while he was Prime Minister in Norway, I had the privilege of working with him. And when he met with other prime ministers from around the world, he used to explain the success of the Norwegian welfare state like this, and I am paraphrasing here. You need to get women into the workforce. And to do that, you need to build enough kindergartens for all the children who need it. And you need to provide paid maternity leave so that both women and men can balance work and family. And the result is more brains, more hands to grow the economy and a broader tax base to pay for schools, healthcare, and maternity leave and kindergartens. It's easier said than done, of course, but it gets the message across. How can you develop a society if you are excluding half the population? And how can girls and women play their part without the status, opportunities, and power to do so? So thank you very much, everybody. Girls deserve to shine.
Xin trân trọng cảm ơn bà đại sứ. Now we wish to invite Madam Naomi Kichahara, UNFPA representative to Vietnam, to share her speech.
Excellency, Madam Gwenty Ha, Vice Minister of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs, Excellency, Ms. Hilde Solbakken, Ambassador of Norway in Vietnam, representatives from the Ministry of Health, Vietnam Farmers Union and government agencies, representatives from development partners and community-based organizations, students of the University of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs, online participants and media colleagues. On behalf of UNFPA Vietnam, I would like to welcome you all to today's dialogue session with young students to discuss the issues which affect our lives, which is the true value of girls within the context of promoting gender equality and addressing gender-biased sex selection. Right in front of us, we have hundreds of young and talented students who are not the future leaders, but they are the current leaders. I'm looking forward to a frank and energetic discussion with you all today. We trust that today's dialogue constitutes another good opportunity for young people to understand their unique roles and share the responsibilities in ending gender-biased sex selection. It is my honor to attend this dialogue together with Excellency Madam Gwenty Ha, Vice Minister of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs of Vietnam, and Excellency Ms. Hilde Solbakken, Ambassador of Norway in Vietnam. To start, I would like to echo Madam Gwenty Ha's remarks as saying that in Vietnam, gender equality is the cross-cutting issue in all the guidelines of the party and the state of Vietnam, and is part of the important tasks in the country's socio-economic development strategy. which aims at building Vietnam as a prosperous, democratic, fair, and civilized country, thus ensuring national security and sustainable development. Madam Ha made this statement a couple of weeks ago during the inter-country consultation meeting held in Hanoi to exchange experience on some preference and gender bias sex selection. Participants to the workshop included government officials and experts from Armenia, Azerbaijan, China, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Georgia. And they visited Baghjan province to learn how the fatherhood program has helped change the attitudes, mindsets, and behaviors of young men and women, how they want to see their children growing up, and how they would like to address gender inequality and the value of girls and women in the Vietnamese society. UNFPA Vietnam is privileged to have worked very closely with the government of Vietnam, especially the Ministry of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and other stakeholders in addressing gender-based violence and gender-biased sex selection to ensure gender equality. Dear participants, gender equality in Vietnam has improved over the past decades. However, gender-based violence, particularly domestic violence, and harmful practices, including gender-biased sex selection, still persists in the country. In Vietnam, the issue is very much embedded in a traditional preference for having sons, which places higher social status to men and boys, and which favors male over female children. Vietnam's sex ratio at birth, SRB, is currently estimated at 111.5 male births over 100 female births. To stop gender-biased sex selection and some preference, and to honor the roles and the values of women and girls in the family and in society, it is critical to stimulate a change in everybody's attitudes and behaviors towards gender-biased sex selection, and this has become one of UNFPA's missions in Vietnam. The project addressing gender-biased sex selection and related harmful practices in Vietnam, funded by the government of Norway, is among many UNFPA projects to achieve this goal. And I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the exceptional support provided by the government of Norway. It is high time to have a fair view that the women and the men have their own values and roles and are able to contribute to the family and society equally. Everyone, regardless of gender or age, job, or social position, deserves to be recognized and appreciated for their values and contributions to this life. This can only be achieved through solidarity. Let us all get united to achieve the philosophy of the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030 of leaving no one behind. We are not leaving girls behind. I wish this dialogue every success, and thank you very much for your attention and participation. Thank you.
Xin trân trọng cảm ơn bà Naomi Kitahara. Thank you for your sharing, Ms.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's stop sons of preference and promote the value.
Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng. It is how you raise a kid regardless of the gender. Girls deserve to shine. Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng. It is how you raise a kid regardless of the gender. Girls deserve to shine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have two sessions today. In the first session, we will have a story of successful women, and the second session will be on policy, how to empower women. Before we enter the first session, let's have a short break. We will resume after 10 minutes. Thank you.
D16 ngành tâm lý của trường ạ.
Từ đầu đến giờ thì Quang ở đây đúng không? Và Quang thấy ấn tượng nhất với cái phần nội dung nào?
Em ấn tượng nhất với lại nội dung về các tổ chức hoạt động của châu Âu đối với phụ nữ, và lý do vì em cảm thấy được rằng là với các nước châu Âu thì họ đã có những cái bước đi đầu và đột phá hơn so với lại các quốc gia khác để dẫn đầu xu hướng bảo vệ quyền lợi cho phụ nữ. Và cũng nguyện vọng của em là rất mong là trong tương lai thì em có thể được dự thêm nhiều những chương trình, những hoạt động như thế này nữa để đảm bảo cho những người phụ nữ, trước hết là phụ nữ xung quanh mình, những người phụ nữ mà mình yêu quý, và sau đấy là cho phụ nữ toàn thế giới ạ.
Sau những cái phần tọa đàm, những phần thông tin mà em đã nghe thì em có cảm thấy là trong cuộc sống của mình sẽ có một số những cái hành vi mà mình sẽ điều chỉnh một chút không? Hoặc là nếu không phải là mình thì sẽ là những người xung quanh mình?
Dạ có ạ, bởi vì là trong tư tưởng của một số người ở xung quanh em thì họ vẫn còn coi nhẹ về tầm quan trọng của phụ nữ, cũng như là những cái hoạt động của phụ nữ, nên là em nghĩ là sau những chương trình như thế này thì có những hành vi ví dụ như là sự tôn trọng hay là sự tiếp thu đối với ý kiến của phụ nữ cũng sẽ được cải thiện, và sau này và về sau thì cái vị thế của phụ nữ sẽ ngày càng tăng cao hơn ạ.
Em có nhận định như thế nào về vị thế của phụ nữ trong xã hội xung quanh em, ở gia đình em, ở nhà trường?
Dạ, với như gia đình em hoặc là xung quanh em thì em thấy là đó là môi trường tôi đề cao phụ nữ, khi mà tất cả đàn ông và phụ nữ trong gia đình hay là trong nhà trường cũng đều có những quyền và nghĩa vụ ngang nhau, và có những sự trợ giúp tương tác qua lại về công việc cũng như là những trách nhiệm và nghĩa vụ giống nhau ạ.
Ok, cảm ơn Quang, và xin mời Quang và tất cả các bạn cùng quay lại buổi tọa đàm.
Dạ vâng. Em cảm ơn ạ.
Ok, chào giáo.
The Administration Office of Investigation Police, MPS, and Dr. Nguyễn Thu Trang, Vietnamese wildlife conservationist and writer. First, I wish to thank both speakers for joining us today. Our students, do you recognize the two distinguished guests on the stage? You do? Any of you here today can help me introduce the two speakers? All right, so let me do it. Allow me to introduce the two speakers. First, Dr. and Colonel Phan Thị Mỹ Hạnh, Deputy Head of the Administration Office of Investigation Police, MPS, a lecturer at the People's Police Academy in Hanoi, and English teachers for many law enforcers of Vietnam to other countries. The other speaker, Dr. Nguyễn Thị Thu Trang, a Vietnamese wildlife conservationist, environmental activist, and writer. She's known for her works in tackling illegal wildlife trade in Africa and Asia. In Vietnam, she's known for her book Back to the Wilderness, Trở về hoang dã, or Trang hoang dã. In 2018, she received an award from Future for Nature and honor as Eco Warrior from L Style Awards, and included in the Forbes Vietnam 30 Under 30 list. An applause for our speakers, please. Allow me to start the session. I think you have seen our very short introduction clip, and there are many important figures. According to the census, Vietnam is facing an issue of imbalance SRB, which in Vietnam is currently at 111.5 male births for every 100 female births, while the natural ratio should be 105 or 106. and it is estimated that 45,900 girls were not born in Vietnam every year because of GBSS. So those numbers really striking. What do you think of those numbers? Chang, what do you think? When I join this dialogue, first I wish to thank the organizing committee. About the numbers, I'm not so surprised by those numbers because I am aware of those situations in Vietnam for a while. When I was born, my father thought, my father met a fortune teller, and the fortune teller said that if he had a child that year, it would be a boy. And so when I was born, my father was disappointed. And he refused to hug me for the first 2 months because back then he expected a son. It was 30 years ago. But nowadays, when I visited many rural places in the countryside, but I encounter some joke saying this family had to sit at the lower table because they only have daughters. And even now, some relatives of mine still told me that we need to have a son. They try to use different foods or diets or even drugs in order to make sure that they have a son. I think the issue has existed for a long time, but only until recently that the issue received more attention. And for that reason, I'm very pleased to join you today to convey the message girls deserve to shine. Please, all of you, please remember this message so that you can change the mindset of people around you. Thank you, Chang. You recall the experience that when you visited your relative and some people mock others simply because the other only have daughters. May I ask, have you ever been told that a conservationist is a man's job? Or somebody may ask, Chang, are you actually a girl? You do not have feminine traits. I encountered that a lot. When I started this job, when I told my parents that I want to become a conservationist, and then they told me that's not the job for a woman. You should be a teacher or so. But I insisted on pursuing my dream. When I started working as a conservationist, and I started my PhD in 2015, and then I returned to visit my parents. My mother told me that you are a girl, you should not study too much. You should try to find a husband. When I became a conservationist, many people tell me that girl cannot be a conservationist, a girl cannot go to the forest or even go to Africa. So many people belittle me simply because I am a girl. But if you have to make a choice again, will you make a different choice? Definitely not. Wonderful to our dear Chang. May I ask Dr. Hạnh, before you assume the current position, have you ever encountered any challenges when you pursue your current career? First, I wish to express my sincere thanks to all distinguished guests and students First, I want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to this Girls Deserve to Shine dialogue. I met Saga and I joined Saga and Girls Deserve to Shine to many events. For example, in Bắc Giang to promote this message. And today, this is another opportunity for me to share the value of women. And here I see some very familiar faces, outstanding women. Many of them have worked with me to promote this message. Back to the question. I was born in a countryside in Hà Tĩnh, in the central part of Viet Nam. I studied literature, so back then I dreamed to become a literature teacher. But my father died at a very early age, so I joined the police force because actually it provided a stable job. But later on, I realized that I really have a passion with being a policewoman. I have experienced lots of challenges to reach my position today and to demonstrate that I'm equally capable compared to my male counterpart. I'm in the police force for 26 years. I had to study martial arts, learn how to use guns, just like male counterparts. When I went to Bắc Giang, I also demonstrate my martial arts skills, and I can even fly an aeroplane. So few people expect me to achieve such miracles. I have been trained in many other countries, and we women indeed encounter more challenges than our male counterparts. For example, when I study abroad, a day I had to study the same way as my male counterpart, but at night I still had to talk to my children back home online to fulfill my motherhood role. So I am a mother. I have to take care of children as well. I also taught in many hot spots in area, for example, Long Luang in Vietnam, which is famous for high drug crimes. So I communicated to local ethnic minority peoples, people on the wanted list, and I show my male counterparts that I am able to do exactly what they can do. So, again, the same question. When you choose the same career, if you can make a choice again? Definitely. If I can make the choice again, I will definitely choose this. At the moment, I'm doing two things. I work at the MPS Administration Office, and at the same time, I'm also a lecturer at the Academy of Police. So that is also my passion. So I find myself to be very lucky. Apart from the two jobs, I know that you also spend your time taking care of your families, right? I think that is a kind of a natural desire for all Vietnamese women to have a good career and at the same time to have a happy family. I have boys. My older son currently studying in Australia. My younger daughter, 11 graders. Really, girls deserve to shine, right? This is a role model for you here. And right now, after we listen to inspiring life stories of our two speakers, how about you, student? Do you have any question for our two distinguished guests? We have quite a large crowd. Could you raise your hand as high as possible so that I can see you? Please, a gentleman here. So the question is that the law on gender equality, about law on gender equality, the impact of the law. So I understand that both of you are not policy makers, but from your own perspective, may I rephrase the question? How gender equality is being demonstrated or manifested in our society today? This is a tough question. Maybe I need to ask Nga from Sisaga to add to legal aspect. But in my view, the law applies on all citizens, and it have very strong impact. For example, in my field, wildlife conservation. In the past, few people talk about gender equality. In my field, I think it's easy to understand because we are conservationists. But even in my field, gender equality applies. In my field, there are also the issues of gender inequality. The majority of my colleagues are men. Women often take up lower position. In international conservationist organization, the directors or vice director are often assumed by men. Men assume decision-making positions. And conservationists like me, I'm from Hanoi, I go to poorer areas. There's some projects. We work with local people. And then the majority of people invited to those meetings are men. They are head of households, etc. If women were invited, they are invited to perform very trivial tasks. They never ask to raise their voice. So in my field, we now pay more attention to gender equality. For example, if we organize a meeting with local people, we need to ensure a 50% men and women ratio, and women must be able to speak up. They must be able to contribute their views. And my organization at the moment are running an organization on gender equality. We try to encourage all wildlife conservation agencies in Vietnam to put in place a gender equality policy. For example, we need some protection mechanism for female conservationists. If you are the only woman in a team of 20 people, and then there are many risks that you may face, even sexual harassment. So we need to ensure an equal and safe working environment for women and people of LGBTQIQ background. How about you, Madam Hạnh? So it's a question about policy. As Chiang mentioned, the law applies on everyone in the society, irrespective of who we are and what we work in. In Vietnam, as you know, the law on gender equality is being applied in all aspects, and Vietnamese women according to the law, should receive equal treatment, even in my field, in the police force. In the police force, we have less women than men. For a unit, we have normally 1 woman per 6 or 7 servicemen. But women in my field, they really show that they are equally capable as men, particularly when they are assigned to suitable tasks. They certainly, some women can even outmatch the male counterparts. We can work a night shift, we can fire guns, we can perform martial arts. So in my area, women really able to demonstrate their worth, values, and talents in ways that are on par with men. Thank you very much for your answers. I'm not sure if the if the answer actually addressed your question. Do you have any further question? Thank you very much. I wonder if there's any further question for our 2 distinguished guests here. Please. May I ask, when you pursue your dreams, what kind of challenges that you encounter and how do you overcome those challenges? Thank you. There are many challenges. So I'm in this career for 26 years. I've been through many positions, and I really struggle to overcome the challenges. For example, when I were on a mission for months, even abroad, but my children was small back then. I had to study abroad, and then at the same time take care of my children back home. It took lots of courage and determination and efforts. I worked a day and tended to my family during the night. I also pursue a PhD degree 2012 to 2016, and I think we have many professors here, and you're aware of the challenges. I had to work during the day, but at night I had to tend to my PhD thesis until midnight. And then we also had to take care of our children, help them to do homework as well. It is really challenging if you want to balance your life and work, your family life and career. It is really challenging indeed. Sometimes I went to ethnic minority and mountainous region. It is very difficult. It was very difficult. Sometimes it was so cold, but I, together with my colleague, we passed through high mountains to reach ethnic minority household to communicate to them about the impact of drugs. That being said, if you have passion and determination, you will be able to overcome those challenges, and your efforts will pay off. Chang, how about you? For me, those who work in the field of conservation, you have to go to the forest and to study animals. So, for example, I went to Madagascar for 3 months. I stay in the forest for 3 months, and you imagine you will have to carry all your personal belongings with you, 20 kilograms bag in the back and another one in the front. You carry your tent, your food. you also need to hire local people to carry your stuff for you. A man can carry 40 kilograms, but I cannot carry that much. You can imagine. Back then, I went to went deep into the forest. It took 8 hours off the road, crossing lots of streams and rivers to reach the research site. And every 2 weeks, I pay a local villagers to bring me further supplies. It was an area without internet, without homestay, without any civilized amenities. I set up a tent and I stay there. For women, there's another problem, which is when you reach a menstruation cycle, you need proper tools to keep yourself clean. So there are many challenges for women to be a conservationist. And there also matter of personal safety. If you are a woman for such a long time, and if you join a team full of men and local people, they're also men. So sometimes you may experience a kind of sexual harassment. And you imagine that you don't have a proper latrines or no bathroom as well. May I just ask the student who just asked the question, do you feel are you scared when you listen to the story, or you feel inspired by those stories? Can you share your feeling with us? First, I want to thank both of you for what you've shared. Those will be wonderful and valuable experiences and lessons. And your story encouraged me to pursue my dreams. And I really like what Chang and Hạnh have said. Girls deserve to shine, right? A big applause. So allow me to wrap up the first session. That being said, if you have further question, we will have a bit more time for you to have a networking with the students, and you may ask for their email and contact address. I know that they will be more than happy to share their personal life and lesson how really to shine. And thank you very much. We will return to the second session, but in the meantime, please welcome another performance.
Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng. It is how you raise a kid regardless of the gender. Girls deserve to shine. Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng. It is how you raise a kid regardless of the gender. Girls deserve to shine.
Vâng, như là lời bài hát vừa.
So, as the title of the song, girls are amazing. Our girls here, do you feel it's amazing to be a girl? Do you agree? So, if you can make another choice, do you want to be a girl? Do you still want to be a girl if you have to make the choice again? How many of you? Thank you so much. So many hands. So that is a wonderful size. Many of you are happy to be girls. Before we start the second session, let's watch a very short clip as follows.
Tại nhiều gia đình Việt Nam, quan niệm con gái là con người ta, con trai mới có thể nối dõi tông đường, thờ cúng tổ tiên vẫn ăn sâu bám rễ trong suy nghĩ. Nếu không sinh được con trai, họ sẽ không nhận được sự tôn trọng của dòng họ làng xóm. Con gái sau này thường sẽ về ở nhà chồng khi đi lấy chồng, nên họ cũng lo lắng không có người chăm sóc khi về già, không có người thờ cúng khi qua đời. Tâm lý thích con trai khiến họ mong muốn có được một cậu con trai để nối dõi tông đường. Chính vì vậy họ bằng mọi cách để thực hiện như soi trứng, lọc tinh trùng và điều tiết chế độ ăn uống trước khi mang thai. Dù pháp luật Việt Nam nghiêm cấm chẩn đoán lựa chọn giới tính thai nhi bằng bất cứ biện pháp nào, nhưng họ vẫn có nhiều cách để biết được giới tính của đứa bé trong bụng mẹ. Do mỗi gia đình thường chỉ có từ 1 đến 2 con, nên nếu thai nhi là gái, nhiều cặp vợ chồng đã lựa chọn phá thai để mong đợi có bé trai cho lần sinh tiếp theo. Những bé gái đã mất tích cả trước khi được chào đời. Năm 2019, nếu so với tỷ số giới tính khi sinh theo quy luật sinh đẻ tự nhiên, thì Việt Nam đã thiếu khoảng 45.900 bé gái được ra đời. Cụ thể hơn, theo Tổng điều tra quốc gia về dân số và nhà ở năm 2019, cứ 100 bé gái sinh ra thì có tới 111,5 bé trai ra đời. Cao hơn hẳn quy luật tự nhiên là 105 đến 106 bé trai trên 100 bé gái. Việt Nam là một trong 3 nước châu Á có tỷ lệ mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh cao nhất sau Trung Quốc và Ấn Độ. Tình trạng này đã kéo dài nhiều năm kể từ năm 2004. Sẽ có tác động về vấn đề nhân khẩu học khi có tình trạng mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh. Ví dụ như dự tính đến năm 2034, Việt Nam sẽ thừa 1,5 triệu nam giới tuổi từ 15 đến 49 tuổi và con số này sẽ tăng lên 2,5 triệu người vào năm 2059 nếu tình trạng mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh không giảm. Theo xu hướng này, các nhà nhân khẩu học gọi chung là khủng hoảng hôn nhân khi nhiều nam giới sẽ khó tìm được bạn đời. Mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh không có nghĩa là vị thế của phụ nữ được nâng lên mà hoàn toàn ngược lại. Khi đó các em gái có thể sẽ phải kết hôn sớm hơn, tình trạng buôn bán phụ nữ, bạo lực với phụ nữ, tệ nạn mại dâm sẽ xảy ra nghiêm trọng hơn. Trong nhiều năm qua, Chính phủ Việt Nam đã rất quan tâm đến vấn đề này và đã có những chính sách và khung pháp lý để giảm mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh. Cụ thể, Chính phủ Việt Nam đã cấm chẩn đoán giới tính thai nhi. Theo Nghị định quy định xử phạt vi phạm hành chính trong lĩnh vực y tế, hành vi bói toán để xác định giới tính thai nhi, tuyên truyền phổ biến hoặc tư vấn để có được giới tính theo ý muốn đều bị phạt tiền từ 3 đến 5 triệu đồng. Trên thực tế, quy định này chưa thực sự phát huy hiệu quả, mức xử phạt cũng cần đích đáng hơn. Một số nước như Hàn Quốc đã có sự điều chỉnh về mất cân bằng giới tính khi sinh. Vấn đề tâm lý ưa thích con trai đã được giải quyết và Hàn Quốc đã thúc đẩy giá trị của các bé gái, bình đẳng giới và thúc đẩy quyền năng của phụ nữ. Truyền thông thay đổi hành vi các định kiến xã hội về giới hết sức cần thiết để chấm dứt tâm lý ưa thích con trai. Trong xã hội hiện đại tại Việt Nam ngày nay, ngày càng nhiều nam giới được tham gia các hoạt động xây dựng nếp sống mới trong gia đình. Họ trở thành hình mẫu nam giới tích cực về bình đẳng giới, xây dựng mối quan hệ lành mạnh và bình đẳng trong gia đình, không sử dụng bạo lực với phụ nữ và trẻ em. Bên cạnh đó, cần tăng cường giáo dục kiến thức về quyền của phụ nữ cho người dân rộng rãi hơn về việc phụ nữ có quyền thừa kế công bằng trong gia đình. Ngoài ra, cần tăng cường hệ thống bảo trợ xã hội cho người cao tuổi nhằm giảm nhu cầu sinh con trai để còn trông cậy tuổi già. Khi không còn nặng nề quan niệm phải sinh bằng được con trai, các cặp vợ chồng sẽ không còn nghĩ tới việc sinh con trai hay con gái nữa. Những bé gái sẽ không còn bị tước đi quyền được chào đời, được sinh ra, lớn lên trong sự tôn trọng và yêu thương. Hãy trả lại sự cân bằng về giới tính khi sinh vốn có của tự nhiên, bởi điều đó sẽ góp phần mang lại sự phát triển bền vững và hạnh phúc của đất nước trong tương lai.
Our student, can some of you summarize the key content of the clip? So the clip is about son preference and GBSS and gender equality. These are daily stories in Vietnam today, creating many barriers for women and girls to develop and contribute. So after watching the clip, I wonder, what kind of responsibility that you feel as young people to contribute to addressing gender inequality in Vietnam? Let's hope that the messages are shared out as widely as possible to ensure that all women and girls have the opportunity to shine. Thank you very much. It's time for the second session. In the second session, we wish to invite Madam Hinde Sobaken, Madam Naomi Kita Hara, and Mr. Lê Khánh Lương. Please join me on the stage for the second session. Please join me on the stage. First, I wish to thank all distinguished guests for joining us today. The first question for Ambassador Hinde Sobaken. Could you share with us stories of successful Norwegian women and how? Some particular example, please.
Hard to choose. But I think I would like to mention Gro Harlem Brundtland. It's a difficult name. Everybody in Norway used to call her Gro. She was the first female prime minister in Norway. Originally, she was educated as a medical doctor, but then in 1981, she became prime minister, first for just a short period. Then she was elected again in 1986, and she had a government with 8 women ministers and 10 men ministers. So it was the first government also in Norway that had almost equal numbers of men and women. And she used that position to promote women and women's rights even further. So in my speech, I talked about the importance of getting women into the workforce. So it was under her government that maternity leave was extended, became longer and longer. Later on, she also became the head of the WHO, the World Health Organization. And again, in that position, she used the power to among other things, really push for maternal efforts against maternal and infant death. She also headed up really the first global commission on environment, and this commission was credited for coming up with the expression of sustainable development. I think today everybody knows about sustainable development, but that really came from her. Of course, Gro, she's an old lady now. So I want to mention one young woman as well. If you want to, you should look out for the name Penelope Lea, or Penelope Lea. She's 18 years old now, finishing high school, but she's been a climate activist since she was 11 years old. And she's now a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador as well. She takes part in a number of even both national debates in Norway and international debates. She's an example of a young person who's making her voice heard, primarily on climate change, but again, she's also really speaking out for girls and for other girls to take an active part in society.
Wow, that was so impressive. And I think that Ms. Naomi Kitahara will agree with me that if there's someone's asked us to tell about the story of the Norwegian woman that success in life, maybe I mentioned the ambassador Norwegian in Vietnam, Ms. Heider Sobeken, because not only the success ambassador, but also look like a Hollywood actress. Okay, the next question I want to give the Ms. Naomi Kitahara. What should Vietnamese young people do to address gender bias sex selection?
Yes, gender bias sex selection, it happens for three reasons in essence. First is this the concept of some preference. So people prefer to have boys to girls. That's first thing. Second thing is the availability of reproductive technology, which can be abused to terminate the pregnancy when the fetus is found to be a girl. And then third reason is the fertility decline and fertility limitation. Today in Vietnam, people have much fewer children, so that can contribute to gender bias sex selection. I think if we ask the question to young people here present today, nobody will disagree that girls should be treated as equal as boys. And so I can see a lot of hope in Vietnamese young people, and because there is a new way of thinking happening, and a much more modern way of addressing gender equality. So what I suggest is that young people in Vietnam should continue to raise voices about equality, and particularly gender equality issues, and influence and talk about it at home, with friends, with the relatives, with the older generation as well, so that we create a movement for change together. And that's the way that we can eliminate gender bias sex selection. Norwegian ambassador just mentioned about some of the communication campaigns that we did with TikTok. I was very inspired to see how creative Vietnamese young people are to try to deliver messages so effectively in TikTok form. So sometimes it's a funny one, sometimes it's a songs created, sometimes it's acting. And so there are a lot of potentials that among the young people in Vietnam that we can explore to join forces to address this issue of gender bias sex selection.
Xin cảm ơn phần chia sẻ của bà Naomi. Thank you.
Vâng, xin cảm ơn bà Naomi. The next question for Mr. Lương. After you listen to Madam Ambassador and Madam Representative to Vietnam, can you share with us about Vietnam's strategies to address GBSS and how to ensure a balanced SRB? First, my thanks to Madam Ambassador and Madam Representative, the MC and all students. Thank you for Queen's question. In the speech by Vice Minister Ha and the opening remark by Madam Ambassador and Madam Representative, you mentioned many policies and strategies of Vietnam to promote gender equality and to prevent GBV and address imbalanced SRB. And in the clip that we just seen, the clip mentioned important policies of Vietnam as well. Allow me to give you a recap. Vietnam have a comprehensive legal framework from gender equality law, the civil code, and the constitution, all affirm the equality of all human beings, and in particular between men and women. And to institutionalize the ideals in those constitution and laws. Vietnam have issued many specific regulations and bylaws to address gender equality and to address imbalance SIB. We have the VPC law and the law on family and marriage and the law on administrative sanction with many regulations preventing GBSS and any form of gender discrimination and to prevent all harmful practices. Vietnam also have important policies and strategies to promote the role of women and men in all aspects of our social life. Communication, for example. In communication, the government issued the national program on communication on population and also the national communication program on gender equality. This is the first time in Vietnam we have a specific national communication program which is directed at GBSS and GBV. So just want to give you some recap on the legal frameworks. The Vietnamese government also working with other governments and international organizations, the government of Norway and UNFPA to promote best practices and good models to ensure gender equality and also to minimize imbalance SIB. Thank you very much, Mr. Leung, for sharing with us the efforts of the government of Vietnam to address gender inequality and GBSS. And I think each of us, each woman should be an agent of change, communicating the messages to others. As Madam Naomi mentioned, she's very impressed by the young people and their initiatives, communication initiatives by TikTok platforms and so forth. And young people here, if you feel that this is the right message, please do share those messages with others. I really encourage you to discuss this matter on fan page on Facebook and creative videos. Another question for Madam Ambassador. What is your suggestion? How can we promote the value of women and girls in Vietnam, in their families, in the community, and even at the international level? Tôi nghĩ rằng tất cả các quốc gia thì
themselves in their own way. But I do think it's possible and important to learn from each other. So we can share examples, we can share experiences. For Norway, we can help fund projects like this one with UNFPA and Melissa. But I think this kind of dialogue is a very good start. To start talking about the issues and start thinking about the issues, and particularly for young people like we have in the audience here, to really start think about what it means in their own lives. That's a very important start.
Thank you. Vâng, như phần chia sẻ vừa rồi của bà đại sứ thì cũng có nhấn mạnh là điều quan trọng nhất là các em, những thế hệ trẻ và chúng ta, mỗi thành viên phải nên lên tiếng và cũng như là có những cái sự trao đổi nhất định với nhau, đúng không ạ?
And how can we join hands together to address gender inequality? The next question for Madam Naomi. Do you have any advice for our girl children here? How can they really shine?
I'm Japanese. I came from Japan. And then I grew up in a very rural part of Japan, very conservative. And so I grew up with people telling me that I don't need to study because if I go to a university, nobody will marry me. And if I cannot get married, I will not be able to have children. So therefore, I should not study hard. So my parents, however, were very education-centered. And my father lost his hearing during the Second World War. And so he wanted to make sure that his children were educated. So my parents are very much education-centered, but in my teenage period, I was revolting against my parents, right? And so I stopped studying completely. And until I met a feminist teacher in my second year in my high school, who basically told me how stupid I was. So she brainwashed me back on track towards educating myself for university. So I managed to get into the university. And then since then I studied abroad in the US and the UK, and then I'm working for the UN now. Sometimes it's difficult to balance also professional career, as my previous panelist mentioned. But balancing is difficult to have both professional career and family life. I remember when I was studying MBA, my second master's degree, I was pregnant with my second child. And a month after my boy was born, I had to take an exam for my MBA. So I drove to the exam center with my son, who is 1 month old, and my nanny. And my son had to be fed, right? But then the exam was for 3 hours. So just before taking the exam, I fed my child with my right breast. And then after 3 hours of the exam, I fed my boy with my left breast at the exam center. So sometimes, we have to juggle and then try to find a way of doing the professional life and the family life. And then I'm sure young people here will go through a more or less similar situation as you grow and as you pursue what you want to do and yet maintain the family life. But I just wanted to say that you can do it. And you can do it, and then that's the way you can shine and you can achieve what you want to do in your life. This is the only chance you have in your life, and it is your life. And you better achieve what you want to do.
Vâng, một tràng pháo tay dành cho câu chuyện rất truyền cảm hứng của trường đại diện Quỹ dân số Liên Hợp Quốc tại Việt Nam, bà Naomi ạ. Vâng, xin chân thành cảm ơn. Thưa quý vị khán giả và cũng như là các quý vị.
Because the time is short, if you have any question for our speakers, you please send us your question, and we will reply to you as soon as possible. My thanks to all of you for your time. Thank you for what you have shared, both personal life and policy recommendations. How can we eliminate gender inequality? I wish all of you good health and success. Thank you very much for joining this dialogue.
Nuôi con như thế nào? Không phải nuôi con nào là con gái để tỏa sáng.
UNFPA Viet Nam, we have many female agents and companions and today we want to honor many of them, many successful women in the meeting room today. We wish to honor them with beautiful bouquets of flowers as token of thanks and as our wishes of future success. May I invite Colonel Phan Thị Mỹ Hạnh from MPS, Dr. Nguyễn Thị Thu Trang, wildlife conservationist and writer, and may I invite Dr. Nguyễn Thị Vân Anh to join us on the stage. Please join us on the stage to receive our token of gratitude. May I invite Madam Hide Sobakan and Madam Naumiki Chahara to join us on the stage to present the flowers to our distinguished women. May I invite Madam Nguyễn Thị Kiều Nga to represent Sisaga, to present flowers to our distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, we once again wish to thank Melissa, Norwegian Agency for Development, UNFPA Vietnam, UNISA, and students and participants. And we thank press agencies for covering this event. I hope we have a meaningful dialogue. Thank you very much for your participation.